I would like to remind you that for more Microsoft webcasts, you can go to microsoft.com/webcasts. Thanks again for joining us for today's TechNet webcast, PowerShell Essentials for the Busy Admin, Part 3 of 5. Sole provider? Not hardly. A look at Windows PowerShell providers. Now it is my pleasure to hand it over to your presenter, Ed Wilson. And Ed, you have the floor.
Thank you, Eric. Hey everybody, this is Ed Wilson. I'm the Microsoft Scripting guy, and today we are going to talk about Windows PowerShell Essentials, and specifically we are going to talk about providers. Sole provider? Not hardly. One of the neat things about Windows PowerShell is this idea or the concept of PowerShell providers. It is one of the revolutionary ideas. And the thing that makes it such a powerful idea is the fact that Windows PowerShell uses the providers to allow us to access different types of information in exactly the same way. And what this means is that I can look at the registry in the same way that I look at the file system. I can find out information about environmental variables or certificates in the same way that I would find out information about files or folders on my hard drive. The commandlets that we have that allow us to work with these generally have the name like item. So we have like new item, get child item, and set item. Things like this. And the reason they're called item is because that item can absolutely be anything. It could be a file, a folder, a certificate, a variable, an environmental variable, an alias, a function. It could even be an Active Directory user or an OU. And the reason for this is because the concept of providers is extensible. That means that other people, other groups, other organizations can build upon this idea of providers. And so because we can build upon these ideas of providers, then we can add additional information to these. And these ideas of these providers are exposed as drives. And so we can use get PS drive to give us a listing of the PowerShell drives. We can use get PS provider to give us a listing of the PowerShell providers. And when we want to change to do work on one of these things, then we use set location. Let's take a look at a demo that uses these things. And I think that it will make this idea a lot easier to understand. So I'm going to share my PowerShell console. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to click on Share. Program and the Windows PowerShell console. And so now I am sharing my console. And so the first thing that we want to do is find out what providers that we have available. So I can say get PS provider, and you can see I hit tab several times. And then eventually gets to get PS provider, and I press enter, and it comes back with a listing of the providers. Now this is on my Windows 7 desktop. So I've got a WizMan provider, and that's used with PowerShell remoting and the WizMan protocol. And there's some configuration things that you could do here, such as you could use this to find out about the ports that are being used for PowerShell remoting. We have an alias provider, an environment provider, file system provider, a function provider. Interestingly enough, in today's Hey Scripting Guy blog article, I talk a little bit about using the function provider to create a function. It's actually kind of a cute idea. Then we have a registry provider, variable provider, and a certificate provider. Now, if I want to find out what drives that I have associated with it, well, for one thing, I can look over here in the right column, and it lists the drives. So we got a Whizman, alias, env, c, d, e, z, function, hklm, cu, variable, and search. Those are the drive letters that we have. I can also just simply use get ps drive, and when I press enter, then the get ps drive will list the drives that we have. In addition, it also tells me the provider names. So it's the same provider names that we've got there. We got the names of the drives, but then it also gives me a little bit more information about the disk space that's in use, how much is free, and some information like that. So get ps drive can allow us to get just a bit more information about the PowerShell drives that you might not get otherwise. If I want to change my directory, my direction, so I could say set location and specify, for instance, the alias drive. So I just alias and a colon. I press enter, and now I'm on the alias drive. And if I type dir, I get a directory listing of all of the aliases that are defined on my computer. I could set my location to the variable drive. Type dir. Actually, I just need to press up arrow and get this, and I get a listing of my variables. I can set my location to HK current user and press enter, and then use the up arrow to get my dir. Now this is get child item, is the actual commandlet name. dir is an alias, and we can see that we get a listing of the upper keys that are in my registry. If I want to go on down through all of these, then I can use recurse, and when I do, I'm going to send this to more, then it's going to go through and begin to get the different stuff there. And I'm logged on as a normal user, and so you saw the error that said that access was denied, and to some of the keys, and then we could keep on going, but I'm just going to press Control-C and clear my screen. Go type H to get the history, and so you can see the commands that I've typed so far. Now, so this allows me to set my location. Now, in the DOS world, we would just use CD. So I could say CD and go back to my C drive, and that works the same way. I can also use CD to go to H key local machine and type dir here. And we see that I don't have access to certain registry keys, but some of them it kind of lets me look at some things. Now, this is one of the things that's real important. A lot of people are concerned or scared about implementing PowerShell in their environment. But PowerShell is a .NET application, and I cannot do anything that I don't have permission to do. So, for instance, I don't have access to a registry via PowerShell if my user account would not allow me to access that registry. So PowerShell integrates in with Windows Security, and it respects Windows Security. So I can only do things that I have permission to do. So let's go back to the presentation. And go to the next slide. So because all of these commandlets are named item, that should give you the idea that we can use these commandlets in the same way. And so we can use exactly the same commandlet to create a file, a folder, an alias, a variable, a function, environmental variable, registry keys, and all of these kinds of things. So anything that that we have or that is exposed via the provider subsystem that we have the right and the ability to create, then we can use these commandlets. Now, I'm kind of hedging this a little bit because the certificate provider, at least in Windows 7 and in PowerShell 2, does not give me the ability to create new certificates. So I cannot go to my certificate drive and type new item and create a new certificate. That is a read-only provider. But in the registry and in other locations, I can set my location there, and I can, in fact, create those items. And the nice thing about this is that it doesn't matter. So once we learn how to do this, then I can create a file, a folder, an alias, a variable, a function, an environmental variable, and it all uses the same commandlets, and we all use them in the same manner. And so now what I'm going to do is I am going to demonstrate using these commandlets to create these new items. And let's go to the PowerShell console. So I'm going to share the PowerShell console. I'm going to clear the screen. And first of all, we'll create a file and a folder. So I'm going to set my location. So I can use CD to just go back to the C drive, type dir to see what we've got. And I'm going to create a folder called FSO. So I'm going to, FSO1, new item, and the name, FSO1, and the path, C:\\, and the item type of directory. And we just created a new folder. So I'm going to set my location to the C:\FSO1 folder, and I'm going to use my up arrow, and I'm going to create a new item, and this time it's going to be FSO file and .text, and the item type is going to be a file. And since I was in this folder location, then I type dir, and we could see that we now created the new file. So using exactly the same command, essentially, then you can see that I created a directory and I created a file. Both of these were new items. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my location to the alias drive. So set location SL is an alias for set location on the alias drive. And type dir, and we can see that we have a number of aliases that are here. And so I'm just going to use the up arrow, and I'm going to create a new item. And the item now, the alias, I'm going to call just Mr. Ed, and the value is going to be get process. And so now if I type in Mr. Ed, then it gives me a listing of processes. So that created an alias. An alias is a shortcut for another commandlet. And you can see it was exactly the same command. So now I'm going to set my location to the variable drive. And I'm going to just use up arrow again, new item. This time I'm going to create a variable called Mr. Ed, and the value, we'll just call this admin. And so now if I access this variable, $Mr. Ed, then we can see that the value came back as admin. I set my location to the environment drive, and I'm going to up arrow again. This time, again, calling on Mr. Ed, admin, $ENV, Mr. Ed, and there it is. So press enter here. Retrieve my history, and you can see that this is an environmental variable, this is a regular variable, this is an alias, this is a file, this is a directory. So all of these different types of data created in exactly the same way by using new item. And that is what makes PowerShell so easy to learn, and it's also what makes it so powerful is with this provider subsystem that I'm using exactly the same methodology to create the different types of data. So we're going to go back to the presentation. So that was creating new items. So getting and filtering items. We talked a little bit about filtering items yesterday when we were looking at working with the pipeline. And so I'm not going to go over this in as great a detail, but I do want to show you that by using these providers, then I can use these same type of commands, get item, get child item, and to access data. And the data is the different kinds of stuff. And so the different things, whether it is a file or a folder or an alias or a function, or an environmental variable, or a certificate, any of these different kinds of things, and I'm going to use the same type of commands, and we will use them in the same manner. So let's take a look at doing that. So we're back at the Windows PowerShell console, and I am going to clear the screen just a little bit. So clear the screen. And so now remember, first of all, let's go to the alias drive. So I'm going to set my location to the alias drive. So I can say get child item, and it gives me a listing of all of the aliases that I have. Now, I'm concerned about the values that are over here, and this is the definition field. And so I want to use get child item, and I'm going to send this to a where object, and I'm going to look for the definition that matches get child item, and close my curly bracket. And when I do, I can see that there are 3 aliases here. And the 3 aliases are dir, and GCI, and ls. So ls is from a Unix background that would be more familiar to you from a Unix perspective. dir is more of a DOS, command prompt type of thing in the Windows world, and that would be more familiar to those. GCI is not really familiar to anybody. It's just one that we kind of made up to make it a bit easier to use, get child item. All 3 of these commands resolve to get child item, and just use whichever one's easiest. ls is the quickest to type if it makes sense for you. I have a tendency to use dir because I've used it forever. So I can up arrow here, and I'm going to change this command to use dir, and you can see that it works the same. I could change it to use ls, and that works the same as well. So all of those work, and those are all aliases for get child item. Now I can use this. I don't have to be on the drive. Now I have been, because sometimes it makes it easier, but I don't have to. So for instance, I can use get child item on the variable drive, and then we get a listing of all of our variables here that are defined on the system. I can use this to look for environmental variables, and we get a listing of our environmental variables. So it's very useful to be able to do this. I don't have to change my working directory, so I don't have to do that. Now, I am going to go back to the C drive. SL is an alias for set location. It's the same as CD. So now I'm going to do a dir on the function drive. I'm going to send this to more. And so we can see that we have a number of functions that are built into this computer. So clear host is one. Disable PS remote and get verb is a function. make directory, more, prompt, tab expansion. I mentioned that the other day, that it's a function. And you can modify that if you wish, or you can use the modified power tab that is on CodePlex. If you were interested in what the tab expansion function might look like, I can use get content and for the function drive. Tab expansion does work, and I can just hit tab and it'll fill in the blanks for me. Then I press enter, and you can see that this is the content of that. Now, if I wanted to back this function up, then all I would need to do is to redirect it to, say, c:\fso .text. And now I have backed up my tab expansion function. So if I mess it up when I'm doing things, then I have a copy that I can go back to if you wish. So, so this is something that we can use. Now, we could go through and get the content of every one of our functions and back all of those up if we wanted to do that as well. Now, I want to show you a little bit more about pipelining stuff. So I'm going to clear my screen, and I'm going to use getChildItem. GCI is an alias for getChildItem, just like dir is. And I'm going to take a look at my c:\FSO folder. And we can see that there's a number of files that are in this particular folder. Now, notice that there is a property, last write time. So if I want to find all of the files that have been modified since a particular time frame, then I can use this filter here. So I could say getChildItem, and I'm going to use a where object, and I'm going to look at the $_last write time is greater than, and I'm going to cast this as a date time object. So I'm going to say date time, and my quotes here for 3/3/12. And close that and press enter. And so we can see that these are the files that have been written to since March the 3rd. And if I'm wanting to find the files that I did today, then I could go back over to 14 or 13. And work with that to filter these things out. So this is using the last write time property to filter out and find files that have been modified. Now, another task that we have sometimes is we want to find out only the folders. And so I could say getChildItem, and I could say where. Go do a curly bracket. $_mode. So you see here's mode right there. So where the mode will match, and I'm going to say D, and close my curly brackets. And so this just gives the directories. Now, one of the things that we're not seeing is we're not seeing the hidden files. So we can see that there are some files on here, and going to come back over here, going to set the force here, and we can see that we're still only getting our directories or our folders by using this mode property and matching that letter D in the first position. There is another property that's available. And so I could send this to getMember, and we can see that one of the properties here is PS is container. So I could say where, curly bracket, $_PS is container, and that also gives me only the folders. So whichever ones of these make sense, whichever one of those is easier to use, you could certainly do that. So let's just go back to the presentation. So I'm going to go back over here to the PowerPoint. So let's go to the next slide. Creating new items. Well, we've already used the new item to create new items, and we use this to create directories. And there is an MD function. We used that the other day, and that's actually easier because it supplies the value. It lets us know that my item type is going to be directory. So the MD function incorporates this idea here so that all I need to do is simply give it this path value. So that's actually easier to use. There are, we can create new items on specific drives if we want to, and by using alias : or generally I will set my location to the drive, create the item, and then come back. But this shows where that you could do it without actually changing your location. This is using a function, creating a function by using new item. I talk about that in today's Hey Scripty Guy blog article. That's actually kind of cool. And this is creating new environmental variables and new variables themselves. In each of these cases here, I included my drive as part of the path to creating my new item. And so I'm not going to necessarily go over and demo all of those, but because we've basically already done it, I just did it a little bit differently by going to the individual drives themselves. So we're going to skip past this demo right here. Now, some providers have their own commandlets, and in general, you would want to use those specific commandlets. So, for instance, I can create a new variable by using new variable. I could create a new alias by using new alias, and that's going to be easier than going to the specific drive to create those items by using new item. You can get away with not using these, but these make it just a little bit easier to do this, and they also make it easier. They expose some values that wouldn't be available otherwise. So I'm going to pop over to the PowerShell console, and we will take a look at some of these commandlets. So I'm going to clear the screen. So I can say get command and look for nouns that are related to variable. Oh, I missed. I do that about half the time. So I don't pay much attention. I hit -N, press tab, it goes to name, and then it goes to noun. And about half the time I'll miss it and go with name instead. So noun variable. So new variable, set variable, clear variable, get variable, remove variable. These commandlets are specifically designed to work with variables. Now I'm going to get a variable, and we can see that we have that variable Mr. Ed, so I'm going to remove it. And actually, one of the ways we can do this is we can just say remove, and that works. And now if I try to get it, then we get an error that says that we can't find that variable. So now I'm going to use new variable, and I'm going to specify the name as Mr. Ed and the value as admin. But we also have some options here. And one of these is description. And so description was not a property that was available. So I'm going to say this is a Mr. Ed variable. And close that. And then I'm also going to use an option. And the option, I'm going to make this read-only. So now when I get my variable, Mr. Ed, we can see that it's there, and it just says the name and the value. That's by default. When I send this to format list, then we can see that we have the description, and we also see that the option is read-only. So now I'm going to go back, and I'm going to get this variable and try to remove it. And this is now going to give me an error. And it says it cannot remove the variable Mr. Ed because it's constant or read-only. If the variable is read-only, try the operation again using the force. So what this is saying is use the force. So we're going to try to use the force. So if I come over here and now I press -F, use the force, boom, the variable is gone. Now if this variable was constant, then I would not be able to remove it. The only way I could remove it would be to actually close out PowerShell, because a constant you cannot get rid of. A read-only variable, I can get rid of it, but I have to use the force. So in general, when I need a constant, I just make it read-only. That way I can go back and delete it if I need to. So that's using the variable commandlets. Let's take a look at using the alias commandlet. So I'm going to clear this screen. And we're going to use get command and -N. Hit it twice this time. Alias. And press enter. And so we can find that we have export alias, get alias, import alias, do alias, and set alias. So, let's create a new alias. So, first of all, let's get the alias. Get alias. Mr. Ed. Yeah, there's a Mr. Ed alias. How about that? Well, notice that we do not have a remove alias. I wonder if I could pipe this to remove item. I can't. And the reason I cannot is because it says I cannot find the path /Mr. Ed. Bummer. But remember, we can go to the alias drive. So let's set the location to the alias drive. Press enter. And now I'm just going to up arrow. And now it worked. So if we try to make sure that it worked, yep, it can't find it. So we do not have remove alias as a commandlet. But it doesn't matter because I can use remove item. But I must be on my alias drive, or I've got to supply a complete path to the alias if I'm like on my C drive. Otherwise, we will get an error. So typically when I do remove aliases, then I'm on my alias drive. So I'm going to set my location back to the C drive. And now I'm going to use new alias. And I'm going to specify the name as Mr. Ed. We'll specify the value as get process. Tab expansion works there. I have a description. And I'm going to call this a Mr. Ed alias. And close this. Now, one of the reasons that I like using these descriptions is because I can use this now to find things that I created myself. I mean, certainly, PowerShell doesn't ship with a bunch of things that have a description of Mr. Ed alias. Dude. Okay, so let's use get, let's just say get alias. And then I'm going to use a where object, where the $_description is equal to Mr. Ed alias. And I'm going to close my curly bracket. And when I do this, then we have found my specific alias. This is the alias that I created. Now, interestingly enough, because I use the same, I can also say get variable. If that variable is still around, I'm not sure it is or not. Now, this time, let's just kind of go back here. Let's say if we match Mr. Ed. Now, no variables that match Mr. Ed, but we can also come over and we can say alias. And there's that. So by using these descriptions, then it makes it really easy for us to be able to find the variables, the aliases, the items that we created where we specified that particular value. Now, importing aliases, exporting aliases, I've got a series of Hey Scripting Guy blog articles where I talked about doing that. So you would definitely want to kind of go back to the Hey Scripting Guy blog and look some of those up. That is if you're feeling like you need some more information about working with aliases. So I'm going to go back to my slide deck. And this is one of my favorite things to do, and that's creating new drives. I put these in my profile, and typically I create a number of PowerShell drives. One of the PowerShell drives that I always create is HT classes root. It's not going to be real exciting as a non-admin, but we'll create that drive anyway to show you how you can create an additional drive in the registry. And then one of the drives that I like to create is the one that I use in my day-to-day business, if you will, as the writing the Hey Scripting Guy blog. And I create, because this is my path, eData Scripting Guys 2012, and that gets pretty long. So by creating a PowerShell drive with a nice short name like that, then it makes it easier to get access to my Scripting Guy files, and each article has like a Word file that has a couple of pictures, and generally it's got a script, and each of those are kept in their own folders. And so it makes it easier for me to be able to work with these things by just setting my location to HSG drive instead of Data Scripting Guys 2012. And so we're going to pop over to the PowerShell console, and I'm going to show you how to create a couple of these PowerShell drives. So I'm going to clear the screen, and the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to use a get PS drive so I see what drives that I have. And you can see that we do not have an HT classes root drive. So I want to create a new PS drive, and the name is HK classes root. And then the provider is registry, and the root. Now this is the hard part here. HK classes, and I press enter. And sorry. I told you it was that was the hard part. H key spelling counts here. HKCR already exists. Groovy. Okay, so get PS drive. So there is HKCR, and it goes right now. It goes to a drive location that doesn't exist, so it's not going to work. So let's use git command for a noun of PS drive, and we can see that we have removed PS drive. So we could say get PS drive HKCR. And pipe this to remove PS drive, and it's gone. And now we're going to recreate it with the appropriate location. And so now it's there, and I can type dir for HT classes root. And we go through there, and we get a listing of the all of the file associations, as well as the component registration. And so for somebody that likes to play around with PowerShell and work with different types of objects, then having access to this information is very worthwhile. So then the next drive that I want to create is one that goes to my Scripting Guy folder. So I'm going to say new PS drive, and I'm going to specify the name of HSG, and then the provider is file system, and the root location is /data, and tab expansion does work here, and Scripting Guys, and then I want to go for 2012, and I say OK. And then I can now set my location to HSG and type a dir, and we can get a listing of all of our different files and folders and stuff that are there. So clear the screen. Now I'm going to go back to my history, and so we can see that these are the two drives that we created, new PS drive and new PS drive. Now the thing is that once I close Windows PowerShell, these values go away. So I'd like to add these to my profile. And to talk about that, is going to be a bit more than I want to get into right now. But I have a series of Hey Scripting Guy blog articles where I do go over a great deal of detail about creating profiles and working with profiles and all of that. I think I will just show you really quickly how to create a profile and how to add these two values to it. And to do this, I need to share my entire desktop. And so I'm going to share the desktop. And at this point, you should now be seeing my entire desktop. And I'm going to set my location back to the C drive, clear the screen. We'll just leave the screen open for right now. Now, I want to see if I have a profile. So I'm going to say test path $profile. And it says false. There is not one. So I say new item and $profile. And the item type is a file. And I'm going to force it. And I say OK. And so now I'm going to open this up in Notepad. And there's my profile. Now, you should be seeing, yeah, there's Notepad, okay. And so all I need to do is to add these commands. So the first one here is hkey classes root. So I add that there. And then I also need to add this right here, location. And that is a bit too far. So we'll just copy that, and then that goes to 2012. Now I'm going to save this and close it and close Windows PowerShell. And then when I open PowerShell, okay. So when I edited my path, I didn't get the path correctly. But you can see that we got the idea, and this drive did create properly, so the other one did not. So what I like to do is this, new PS drive and HSG, the name. And then the provider is file system. And then the root is /data /scripting guy. And then it should, I thought it should have been 2012. There we go. So that was it. And so then that should have created that. And so I'd like to copy this command into my profile. And I can come over here and paste that. Then you have to edit it back out a little bit. So you could be there. And then we save it. And then we open it back up again. And when we do, then this time it should be correctly, and it did. I think I had a space in it the last time. So, so this is a way that you can add these drives and always have access to them. So we'll go back to the presentation here. So learning resources, we have the Hey Scripting Guy blog. I write a new blog article 7 days a week. And so there is always a new article that's available, and you can get track of it by connecting to the RSS feed if you want to. We got the scripting games that are coming up in 2012. They will start on April the 2nd. So you want to go to the Scripting Guys page and go to the all-in-one page, and that will give you information about getting signed up and all of this. The other thing that you want to know about is that on Monday is International PowerShell User Group Day, and so we have some information about that on the Scripty Guys website, so you may want to check that out. That'll be a really cool day. All of the PowerShell users groups in the world are going to try to connect to this live broadcast that will be going on, and so it should be pretty exciting, pretty fun thing to do. There's going to be some really neat people that will be speaking at that. So we got some questions, and the questions are, let me take a look, see. When you use single quotes and double quotes in the filters, Bob, I can use these at any time. I just need to match them up. So a single quote is a literal quote, and that means that we're going to be looking at that literal value. Double quotes are expanding quotes, and they would allow the value that was inside that to expand. And so for that, generally, you want to use single quotes because it's going to be more accurate. I have a tendency to get careless, and I use the double quotes most of the time. For aliases, what is the highest priority location commands with different functions but the same name? Stuff that's closest to you is going to have the highest priority. So aliases that you define inside your personal profile are going to override things that may exist in other locations. And that's the same thing with functions. You know, things that are closest to you will have the greatest priority. Dash GT appears to be greater than or equal to, since dash GT 3:14:12 returned items with a write time of 3:14:12. It's greater than. The reason that returned items with a write time of 3:14 is because of the way that the date time value itself works. When we say 3:14:12 as a date time, that is as of like midnight at the very beginning of the new day. So anything that was basically created after midnight on that particular day will be greater than that value. That could be a little tricky sometimes on that, but yeah, keep in mind that if I do not specify a time when I create a date time object, then it is assumed to be at midnight of that day. Questions related to yesterday's webcast. Pound sign does not seem to produce a wide format. Wide format A equals 5, blah, 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 format wide auto size. Works as advertised. Get process, pipe format wide auto size. Let's see, that's a little truncated, but I'm going to say that that doesn't work as exercise. And the reason is that with format wide, you're going to do a single value. So you need to, so get process is rich object. It has a whole bunch of values, you know, names and process IDs and everything else. And format wide wouldn't know what to, how to format it. So you would need to choose format wide and then specify the dash property parameter to tell it that you wanted to format the listing of names or process IDs or something like that. How can I run PowerShell using a different user ID? I may have more admin rights. Second question, does that alias stay on the console or remain in there always? It is available in the console, and when I close the PowerShell console, the aliases go away, just like my PowerShell drives would go away when I close the PowerShell console. So what I need to do is I need to put them in my profile if I want them to be available all the time. I also, as a best practice, this is an advanced topic, but when I create a function in a module, generally in my module, I will also define aliases for those particular functions. Now, I haven't forgotten your first part of the question. I just wanted to answer the second one first. How can I run PowerShell using a different user ID? I can right-click on what is PowerShell and say Run As. I can right-click on the PowerShell ISE and say Run As. I can use Run As directly. I can also specify alternate credentials when I connect to a remote machine. And I might do that tomorrow or the next day. I know I'm going to talk about it at one point in time. I'm not sure when. But there's a number of commandlets that have dash credential. And so I can specify the credential when when I want to connect to do something. Missing the PDF WMV from day one. These broadcasts will be made available probably within a week, and I'm going to assume that the slide decks would be available from those, but I'm not certain on that. How did I tab complete without replacing the content after the part? I didn't. Okay, so this is a feature of PowerShell 1 and PowerShell 2. When you hit the tab key and you're in the middle of a line, then it erases everything after that. Now, and what is PowerShell 3? We've actually fixed that feature or removed that feature so that you can actually hit tab and it does not delete the end of the line. What I did here in my demos today is I was very careful not to hit tab to replace it. Otherwise, it would have deleted everything behind, in front of the cursor. How can I make changes for the remote PC and the registry using HKey local machine provider? Is it possible? For example, necessary to remove some wrong keys, bad keys on a remote machine. What you do is you're going to use Windows PowerShell remoting, and so you can use either invoke command or you can create an actual remote PowerShell session on the remote machine. At that point, then you just use the PowerShell drive, the registry drive, HKLM, and specify the new values or remove item to either modify or to delete the registry keys. That's pretty much the easiest way to do it, and it works pretty well. I've got a number of Scripting Guide blog articles about that. On the Hey Scripting Guide blog, click on the PowerShell tag, then click on Registry tag, and they'll all be right there. Persist the PowerShell drives by putting them in your profile. Can I create a new PowerShell drive for a UNC? Absolutely. I could just as easily have said, whack whack server name, whack whack share. It's actually pretty cool. It works. When using the ISE, more doesn't work. That is correct. It does not work. That's one of the differences in the ISE. The other thing in the ISE is that the start transcript doesn't work in the ISE either. It's an easy way to see if a shell is elevated. I have a function that is on the Hey Scripting Guide that's called test is admin. Use that. Speaking of credentials, can I log onto a machine remotely using PowerShell, or have I been wasting my energy trying? Log into a remote machine using PowerShell. Yeah, you can certainly do that. Use enter PS session, but make sure that you've turned on PowerShell remoting first. Looks like it's about the last question. Is there any blog for installing certificates, SSL, or the cert provider? I don't think I've written about it because it's a pretty advanced topic. I did have a chapter in my one of the PowerShell books I wrote. It's called the PowerShell Resource Guide, and which I used the API, actually using like Capicom to install certificates and stuff like that. It gets a little hairy. I'm sure that if you did a Bing search, for PowerShell and then install certificate, you would see some information. As a matter of fact, I think that there's a Codeplex project that kind of expands that and makes it a little bit easier to work with. So, yeah, there's definitely some resources. It can definitely be done, but it is a bit of an annoyance there. Okay, so we are now coming up to the end of the session, and we see that there is the survey. So please take the survey and look at that.
All right. Well, I do want to thank Ed Wilson for presenting today. And thank you all for attending today's webcast. Be sure to fill out a survey before you go. Give us some feedback. And with that, thank you for joining us, and have a great day.